Would you like to discover powerful ways to drive change in your organization? Would you like to learn about the latest concepts in people strategy, HR effectiveness, and optimization that will help your organization achieve a competitive advantage in your industry? Then HRBP MBA Masterclass with Ron Thomas is for you. With today's uncertain business landscape, HR leaders now play a pivotal role in what some say is a paradigm shift in the industry. This comprehensive 3-day program, in-person or virtual, will empower you to embrace a more strategic mindset, enhance your decision-making skills, and help your organization to the next level. To register as a group or individual, email us at info@strategyfocusgroup.com or visit our website at www.strategyfocusgroup.com.
Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, you know it's the CEO series where we bring together global leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, and innovators. Our guest today is Amy Stanton, who's the founder, CEO of Stanton Company. A little background. Founded a company in 2006 with a passion for promoting and building positive female role models and messaging for women. Since it's opened its doors, it has evolved into a leading boutique marketing and PR agency focused on healthy, active living with a roster of philosophy-driven brands, exceptional athletes, amazing health and lifestyle experts in brands and health and wellness. I want to read this because before founding Stanton Company, she was the chief marketing officer for Martha Stewart Living, where we met years ago. And prior to that, she was the head of marketing communications for NYC 212, which was New York City's effort to try and bring the Olympics to New York. And with that, I welcome my friend, Amy. How are you?
I'm great, Ron. I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while. We were talking about that before we went live. Well, it's been a long time, but we won't go into the years. We won't calculate that. But
no, and we haven't aged.
Thank you.
We haven't.
We still look the same, right? It's cool. So you've had an amazing career. So you marketing to leading that bid to bring the Olympics to New York. Then bringing all that talent to MSLO, Martha Stewart Living Omni Media, and now you're at Stanton Company. Walk us through that.
Well, yes, it's funny because time flies, I guess I should say. I really started my career in advertising, actually, working at big ad agencies on big accounts like Kodak and Zantac 75. I never even knew what heartburn was until I was working on Zantac 75. And maybe in some ways that was the beginning of my focus in the health space now that I look back. But I really learned my chops there. I worked my butt off. It was an honor to work until 10 or 11 p.m. every single night and really grind it out. But that's, I think, part of living in New York. And then I worked at a couple other agencies, and then someone called me and said, I have the perfect job for you. It's the head of marketing and PR for New York's Olympic bid. And I, first of all, had never even heard of an Olympic bid. I said, Jane, I do not understand how this could be the perfect job for me because I'm from Los Angeles. I don't know anything about sports or the Olympics. And I'm not even sure it's a good idea to bring the Olympics to New York. And she said, just trust me, go in and meet Dan Doctoroff. And I did. And I was sold after the first hour, and he was such an incredible, inspiring human, is an incredible, inspiring human, but also leader. And I would have done anything to follow that guy, as it turns out. And so that was a really pivotal moment for me because it turned New York City into a playground. It felt super purpose driven because it was right after 9/11. So it was kind of the ray of light and hope for the city at a time that was so dark. We lost to London, and ironically, I ended up going to the Olympics in a different capacity, but it was an incredible experience. And a lot of the projects and initiatives we started during the Olympic bid actually materialized and transformed New York City. So Hudson River waterfront and a number of other things. So really exciting stuff, really incredible project with every possible twist and turn, and kind of the years and years and years of learning into the few years that I was doing that. I then left, and I felt like even though I was in my early 30s, I was ready to retire because I was so exhausted. And one of the gentlemen that I worked with on the Olympic bid, who was the head of our creative committee that I had assembled to help us do all of our marketing and communications, Rick Boyko, was on the board of Martha Stewart and said, they're looking for a chief marketing officer. You'd be great. And so one thing led to another. Suddenly I was meeting Martha, and funny enough, I was never this kind of crazy Martha Stewart fan. I think a lot of people that end up working for her, or at least trying to work for her, are obsessed with Martha. I was really inspired by what she had built, and in many ways loved what kind of a direct, powerful leader she was, even though I know she gets a lot of heat for her style. She's such an incredible creative visionary. So it was a real honor to work in that capacity. And of course, that's where you and I began. And I was there for a little under a year, and I had always wanted to start my own business. And I had started thinking right after the Olympic bid. So my whole family's entrepreneurs. And I guess I grew up thinking anyone and everyone can start a business. And it's good to have that wiring, because God knows you really have to be almost insane to do it. And I tell that to anyone that is thinking about it, please, you might have to be insane to start your own business. That's one of my main lessons learned coming out of this. I'm glad I did it, but it was, I had started thinking about female athletes in women's sports, because this was 17 years ago. There was, first of all, most people couldn't even name one or two female athletes. And
you're right.
I mean, now it's a little bit better 17 years later, but it was really horrifying, that especially because I had worked with all these incredible athletes during the Olympic bid. And I thought more people should know who these people are. Plus it was really a time where we needed more female role models in general. I mean, we still do, we always will. But in that moment, it really felt like reality stars were our new heroes, and we needed to do something about that. So, I mean, again, actually, I think Paris Hilton's a great example of someone who has totally reinvented herself and a lot of good in the world. So,
let me just stop you for a sec. Don't even get me started with the reality shows and women and all of that. So I know exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it is. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. I mean, now it's influencers, it's not even people on television. It's people, anyone and everyone who creates content about anything can be a star. So, I mean, that's interesting in a lot of ways from a marketing standpoint. But so I started this business, and I started with a business partner for the first couple of years, and she had experience in representation. And the idea was to build a mini IMG, but focused in the women's space. So with representation and consulting and events and content and PR and anything and everything that could work to amplify the voices of female athletes and build women's sports platforms. So the representation stuff took off. I never thought I was going to be any sort of agent. I grew up in LA thinking that was a bad word. I have a lot of agent friends, so I'm sorry. I have to still say that as part of my spiel. But suddenly I was a sports agent, which was super ironic, because I, again, knew nothing about that space, but then pretty quickly became a real advocate for an expert in the women's sports space, and was representing all these incredible women in action sports and Olympics, and the representation stuff took off, even though that was the one piece I really was sort of figuring out as we went. And then after the first couple of years, I split up with my business partner, moved back to Los Angeles, brought a number of the athletes I was working with here. I mean, not physically, but in my business. And then this marketing and PR component, the stuff I actually knew how to do originally, started to really come into play. And we started working with an organic snack bar and doing all their brand development and public relations. And then a vegan beauty brand and an eco water bottle, and all of these what I call philosophy driven brands that are trying to make an impact in some way and make people healthier, greener products, things that have a bigger point of view in the world. So, and it's stuff that really mirrors my life. So we still have the representation stuff, and the women's sports piece will always be a big piece of what we do, because women's sports is a big part of this healthy, active living space. And we also had the great fortune of working with ESPN to build an event called the ESPNW Women in Sports Summit, which I helped build and then executive produced for 7 years. And it was really this sort of bringing everyone and anyone who was a thought leader in the women's sports space together to help make change. So that was really amazing too. So that piece will always be really important for the business and an important part of my heart. But we're now doing lots of public relations. And I never thought that would be such a big piece of the business, but now PR is a rebrand of what we used to call marketing.
So that's just growth opportunities. You saw something and you said, let's pivot and do that. So, I want to go back to the Olympics bid for New York, and not knowing anything about that market and that business. And you were able to, without knowing that, you were able to pivot and get more involved in the Olympics from the, I'm going to say, the client side, the athlete side. Strong pivot.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. So coming out of that bid, one of the job opportunities I had, and I chose Martha over this, was to run the Olympic sponsorship for Johnson & Johnson in Beijing. Oh. And it was their first time as a top global sponsor. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, once you're kind of indoctrinated in the Olympic space, you have a whole different perspective on things, because it's a very nuanced space. And on the athlete side, it's even more nuanced, and sport by sport, and each thing is a little different. But I'm a brand builder. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think so. One of my first big clients was a woman named Gretchen Bleiler, who had just won the silver medal in the Torino Olympics. And she was one of the best female snowboarders in the world, had more X Games golds than any other female snowboarder at the time. And I think she trusted me because she thought if I could be the CMO of Martha Stewart, then I could probably help do it.
That branding took it over, right?
Yeah.
It worked. It has worked for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess people talk a lot about imposter syndrome, but I think there's a reframe on that, which is that we're all learning and growing all the time. And that, from my perspective, is a great thing. And so you can sort of look at it as, oh my God, I'm totally ill-equipped for this and the world's going to come to an end. Or it's an opportunity to really roll up your sleeves and learn and figure out what needs to be done, and surround yourself with the right people to make sure you're taking the right steps. And, when I started my business, especially after I went out on my own, I was a little scared because I thought, oh my God, now I'm really out there. And I realized pretty quickly that we're all surrounded by these resources and people that can help and that are actually eager to help us. People love being asked for advice. I mean, I know I do. I'm always happy to support people, whether it's building a business or other, but really it's a gift. So we're never alone, and it's really just about thinking about who to tap into and how to do that.
So did you have to relearn? You say it's always a learning process, because if you mentioned some names before we went online of some of your clients that are in the Olympics, did you have to learn about the sports of swimming and the women athletes and their sports? Because in order to brand it, you're going to have to, I'm thinking you'd have to understand the job that they do.
100%.
What was that process like?
Yes. I mean, there's so many elements that you're learning from scratch. So yes, I came in knowing about the Olympics. I came in knowing how to build a brand or how to strike the right conversation to build a partnership and all these things, which is ultimately what we needed to do. But yeah, when I started working with Gretchen, I had literally never seen snowboarding live.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. Maybe I had never even watched a snowboarding contest on TV. It's embarrassing, but true. So And then suddenly I became an expert in women's snowboarding. This was necessary for the job, but
Yeah.
I think in a way, and I think this is true, even going to something like the Olympic bid or the Martha situation, all of which were me kind of figuring a lot of things out. It's good to come in without biases and in a more objective way where you are looking at it from an outsider's perspective, because especially when you're brand building or trying to understand how consumers are going to feel about this or any sort of third party, it's good to be unbiased about it. So yeah, I had to learn the ropes of the sports and the politics of the sports and the different sponsors in the sports and how to talk to those sponsors. I mean, I remember in action sports, it's such a different culture. I come from, New York City and my little outfits.
Yeah.
And then there are these trade shows in action sports where everyone's like running around in bikinis and there are keggers going on and I mean, God knows what else. And I was like, the inmates are running the asylum. I have left the earth. Like, where am I? This is so unfamiliar.
Yeah.
That's part of what's fun, it's about
Yeah.
discovery and then figuring out how to apply your knowledge to it.
Well, I'm always amazed. I was telling someone the other day, and you look at great companies that have been built, great brands that have been built. These are people that maybe dropped out of college. You look at people who are Snoop Dogg, whose Martha is, that's her new BFF.
Yeah.
Did not go to any schooling, possibly beyond college, and is now a major brand, millions and millions of dollars being made. So are we all in a learning environment? We're all learning.
Well, we can be. Yeah. I mean, I think so much of it's a learner's mindset too, like how do we, and I think people resist it sometimes. I always talk about, like, with my team members, sometimes people are either upset because they're not learning enough or fast enough. And that was me. I was the most patient person in the history of time in the early days of my career, where I just wanted more and more and more. And I thought I had figured it all out quickly. And I wanted to, and I wanted my boss's job, not because I wanted them out of the way, but I wanted them to be elevated, There's that type. And then there's the other type, which is the person who is feeling totally out of alignment because of either overwhelm or they feel like they're in over their head and they don't know what to do, or how they may not even realize they don't feel equipped for their job. And by the way, oftentimes those are the same person, just at different stages. So I always feel like there's this sort of growth period, is that sort of learning in any new role, or it could be a promotion, but like, taking over more responsibility, learning, and then you plateau, and that's where the boredom and, oh my God, maybe I'm not in the right place anymore. And I don't have the right boss, whatever the things are, the external things. And then suddenly you're thrust into this next phase, which is learning. It's always uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think it's good. I've always said it's good to be in that space that you don't know what to do next, and you just explore.
Yeah. I mean, and also, if you can be comfortable with the discomfort of either the learning process or maybe a moment where you don't feel challenged enough, and you can kind of be more objective about it and figure out how to make the most of it one way or the other, that's the game changer,
So let's talk about your dance routines, because I've been following that, and so for the folks that are not initiated to this, Amy does these dance routines. Is that early mornings kind of approach that you do that, or midday?
All different. I have this wonderful teacher. His name is Kiari Kirk. His Instagram is Kiari LK.
Okay.
And he choreographs these routines. We learn them in class throughout a 2-week period. And then we all we have a beach day at the parking lot in Santa Monica. Yeah. And that's where we learn the routine again. And then he films us. And so a while back, he said, you should post these, because then you'll have them all in one place. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm just not sure that's a great idea, but then why not? And now it's so funny that I think you mentioned it, you referred to it as like a branding thing. it is now, if I run into people, and I don't even know if they're following me on Instagram, that is really what people are thinking about, which I think is so great, so fun.
Yeah. That's, it's cool because I was at Dubai's airport a few weeks back. I was taking a local trip, and someone was walking, and they were looking at me and said, "Oh my God, I follow your series, CEO series." I'm like, "Oh, okay, first time that's ever happened."
I love it. Yeah, you're a legend.
Yeah.
You're a legend.
Well, the key is, so when you do that routine, for me, because I mentioned Walkabouts, mine is branded Walkabouts. I do these walking in all of these countries. I was in India and I did the walkabout in India. But it's not about, for me, it's not about exercise or walking. It's just about clearing the mind, thinking. Is that kind of the same residue that you pull from those routines? And when you do that, are you
Yeah.
dancing?
100%. And in fact, I think one of the reasons I love choreography so much is because I have a hyperactive brain and the choreo requires full attention. So when I'm learning routine, I can't be brain multitasking because I won't learn the routine. So it keeps me super present. And obviously there's the physical release of it. And also in the case of dance, it's a great creative expression. I mean, there are definitely times, and I laugh at myself a lot in life, but especially in dance, because there are a lot of things where I'll see something super bizarre that I do, and I'm like, oh my God forbid, but it's part of it too, is it's just fun. You just got to be kind of go with it and allow yourself to be a little bit free in it.
Yeah. You're freeing yourself when you do that, because mine is about freeing the mental anguish. And when I get back to my desk or I get ready to go to work, I basically thought through, because mine is 2 hours. I normally start at 5 a.m. and I walk until 7 a.m. And when I walk outside, specifically in Dubai, it is dark.
Wow.
And there's so many people on the street that's doing the same thing. Now, they may not have the same mindset of clearing their thought process, but it's the same thing.
I love it. I mean, what a cool thing to do a 2-hour walk too, because so many times walking, we're using it as a means to an end, and we're kind of, I mean, I think about how much walking we did in New York, and it was power walking,
Especially at Starrett, getting all the way to the west side.
I know. And just in a constant state of like high alert, trying to avoid running into someone or whatever, it's not a relaxing experience.
Yeah. So you mentioned craziness to become an entrepreneur, which kind of, okay, that's cool. Because you hear people, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody has an idea. Everybody wants to do whatever they want to do. How would you advise someone that has a thought and they wanted to bounce something off of you to give them real insights? Because I tend to do that. It's not the facade you're looking at. It's not the real deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, as much as I joke about the fact that you have to be insane to do it, and I'm only partially joking, I really encourage people to give it a shot. I think you kind of don't know until you know. I have certain people that work with me that say I would just never start my own thing, or I watch what you do and I would never want to do that. So I really think that's hilarious, because I mean, I understand it too. So sometimes I feel like that. But I think, first of all, just in terms of the sort of initial stages of building a business, a lot of it's about really understanding the why. Like, why are you starting your own business? Is it because you are trying to escape something? Is it because you believe it's going to represent freedom?
Yeah.
Because it isn't. I mean, I was speaking with someone recently about my vacations, when I travel, and I will say I can travel when I want, but I will always have my computer. I will always be responding to email. 9 out of 10 times there will always be a crisis of some sort. And it is just, I expect that. And as long as I'm okay with that, then yeah, I can go on vacation. But it's not like, for some people, going on vacation is shutting things down. That cannot, I still get a good experience, but it's not the same. So that's an example of this is not maybe the freedom that you're envisioning when you're thinking about freedom as an entrepreneur. But
Yeah.
what I will say is that the freedom it represents for me is that I can choose the employees that I work with. I can choose the clients that I work with to some degree. You know, I get to make certain decisions that really shape the environment and the experience and the business. And you know, that does feel liberating because
Yeah.
I've really over the years made an effort to surround myself with super high vibration. This is a California term, of course, high vibe people. But you know, a certain
I like that.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's true though, because I feel like we make these choices in the minute to minute of who we're surrounding ourselves with and whom. And it's so easy to be unconscious about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we get to choose, you
Yeah.
know, even our friendships or whatever, or people that so much stuff is habit, but make more deliberate choices. So I do that in my work, and that is freeing.
Mm.
But I think, you know, at the end of the day, make sure it's a great idea, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons,
Yeah.
and know that things are not going to go at all how you expect, and know that whatever idea you started with is probably not where you're going to end up in terms of the business, and be okay with that. You know, be open, kind of like sort of like what we were talking about before, look around you and see who your resources are that can be helpful as you build and grow so you can get as smart as possible as you do it.
One of the other key points that you mentioned was to surround yourself with great people. And, so one of the things that I tell people who are thinking about, becoming an entrepreneur, I say, if you're not good at something, find someone else who's better at it.
Yes.
What is your expertise? You focus on that and you bring people in. That could be on a part-time contractual basis or whatever it is, but you have to surround yourself with great people because you're spreading yourself too thin. Is that kind of the way? Because you kept mentioning great people that you work with and on your team.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's also about enjoyment. So yes, I totally agree with you. We're not going to be the best at everything.
Mm.
You know, and as much as I always try to get better at most things, I know that there are many people that are better at certain things than I do. That's a good thing, you know? So, I mean, again, part of my journey has been in building this over time, really looking closely at the things that I enjoy doing and trying to build a team to support that so that I can do the things where I'm going to thrive and be my best and help build the business and not kind of get sucked into the stuff that's energetically exhausting for me or that I'm not that great at. So,
Yeah.
but that's a constant journey. And again, as the sort of the buck stops here, I'm dealing with a lot of those things that I wouldn't necessarily choose
Yeah.
anyway.
So I want to go back to the vibe. You mentioned the vibe. You said that's a California thing. I love that. For my global audience, there's certain colloquialism that we use in certain parts of the U.S. that you may not be familiar with, and that's what she was talking about when she mentioned the vibe, high vibe relationships. Because I've looked at people that drain me after I have a conversation. I don't deal with that anymore. I just no, I can't because you have friends or you have competitors or people that that it's always draining to have that conversation. And I feel as an entrepreneur myself that I need to always try and stay positive. If it's negative, I'm going to close it down in a heartbeat and try and move on.
Yes, well, because I think things, any moment in time is either energizing or depleting. We may or may not be conscious of that, and
Yes.
we may not get to choose all of it, but um, so many of them we can. But just to be clear, it's one of the reasons when you asked if I would do this with you, I was like 100% yes, because you've always been a person that was really energizing for me. And it's true. Every time I've ever had any interaction with you, it's been a very high vibe experience. So it's true. Like I really kudos to you.
Oh, we're talking high vibe 15 years ago. I didn't even know what high vibe was.
I know.
But
Well,
I made the cut. So that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I made the cut. I'm so excited to hear that. That's so cool. So women branding, now healthy lifestyle branding. how do you see that evolving in the next 5 years or whatever it is? Because women's sports are huge now. Women athletes are huge now. Look into your crystal ball. How do you see it moving into the next phase?
I mean, first of all, just so you know, Ron, I do have a crystal ball.
Okay.
I do. It's right over there. I'm not even kidding. But secondly, I think what's interesting in the women's sports space specifically is that there have been these breakthrough moments where different sports have had these meaningful equity moments, people pay. And tennis was the first, but then,
Yeah.
Soccer and hockey, I mean, they're different. Like the structure of the deals are different, but each of these sports is going through these moments of kind of fighting for equality. And that's what's required. It's like that's required for change in general. So I think we'll keep seeing those moments. Now there's definitely much more of a mainstreaming of certain female athletes. So there are athletes in certain sports, like again, tennis, because it gets the most visibility, and it always has on the women's side of any of the sports consistently, not just around the Olympics. People know a big female tennis player like Serena Williams, even before she was the GOAT,
Yeah.
So it's, people like that have become household names, and that's really exciting. And that's, I think, a great sort of example of big change, but there's just so far to go, and it'll be incremental. I think we'll still see brands investing more and more in various sports, sometimes because I think, well, one thing, and this is certainly how we approach a lot of the brands that we're working with on the athlete side, is lots of brands are looking for ways to demonstrate that their products are great for high performers or for people that are kind of the embodiment of health. And so athletes are a great example of that. So we'll see more and more of that. That's not going to change. I mean, for the better only. And then more broadly, did you just ask a question?
No.
Oh, I heard feedback. Sorry, probably on my end. The health space has been really interesting because as a result of the pandemic, the one good thing, maybe there are other good things too, but is that people actually cared about their health for the first time and felt that they could take control of it. So people are doing a lot more independent research. People are buying products specifically focused on health and being proactive around things like immunity. And so this more educated and more engaged consumer means there's so much more progress potential with brands and products and PR for that matter. And we're seeing the media is really using these expert voices. We work with a bunch of experts in addition to brands as the sort of lead voices to help explain various health things and also help explain why certain products are great. So it's given us a different, I mean, first of all, there's so much momentum in that space, which has been great for our business, but also it excites me that people are open to the information and taking more initiative to really learn and take control of their health. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is the democratization of health.
Okay.
And right now, there's such a small population of people that have access to healthcare, and the best, especially the U.S. is, every country is different, but in the world, such a small percentage of people have really great healthcare and are healthy even. So we're seeing again incremental change, and that's exciting. And this is kind of the first step. So I'm a Pollyanna, and I know that has negative connotations sometimes, but I do really see the good in most things. I think I get that from my mom, but I feel like this is one of the really positive things from the kind of insanity that we've gone through over the past few years.
Okay, cool. Let's take a quick commercial break and we'll come right back.
Identify and book the world's best speakers for your next event. MENA Speakers is the leading speakers and MC bureau in the Middle East. We bring global talent to the region and have established the region as a key global hub for speakers. Inspire and motivate your audience. Find exactly what you are looking for by working closely with us to assist you in understanding the cost-benefit analysis tied to selecting a speaker for any event. Ensure that your audience is educated, engaged, and empowered. Connect with us for a quick response and tailored advice. Book your speakers now.
And we're back. So as we begin the process of closing out, I want to get some insight from you as it relates to leadership. What is the most important leadership lesson you've learned throughout your career?
Oh, Ron, it's not easy just to narrow it down to one, but
Okay. Give us a couple.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've had so many bosses over the years and many wonderful bosses and others that maybe weren't the best fit for me. But I think we're kind of a combination of all those things. So at the top of the list, like I think transparency, again, some of these things are things that were important to me and that's why I think they're important, but transparency and directness and was something that really was part of the Olympic bid with Dan Doctoroff and the way that he led us. And I was telling you, I just recently had a great conversation with a colleague from the Olympic bid about the things that sort of Dan's playbook. And for me, being in an environment where you know exactly where things stand, one way or the other, is better. Because if things are great, I want to know that. And if things aren't great or there are things I need to do differently, I want to know that. Or if this project is going well, great, I want to know that. And if it's not, we got to fix it. So the only way, people talk about communication and that's a piece of it, but also a direct style, I think allows a lot of things kind of to get out of the way and not everybody can handle it. I wrote a book called The Feminine Revolution, which is all about taking feminine qualities that have been perceived as weaknesses and reframing them as our superpowers, which I believe they are, one of which is crying. So crying has always been perceived as a total no-go in the workplace. And Dan was a total yeller. I mean, he not all the time, like he's also got the biggest heart, but he was so passionate and I am a crier. So we had a yeller and a crier. And I who knew that those two things could work so well together, but really the sort of directness and putting it all out on the table, we were able to communicate. So I think that piece is important, but I would be remiss in not talking about the sort of the feminine piece of things, which is really allowing your full self to be at the workplace. And that doesn't mean not having any sort of boundaries, but it means showing up as yourself and not having these guardrails that prevent you from expressing yourself and not holding back the fact that you're an emotional person because you think that's not welcome here. Figuring out kind of the productive side of being emotional and bringing that to the workplace so that you can shine, because that's a big piece of it. So yeah, I think authenticity is kind of the summary of that.
That's the exact word I was going to use because someone posted online earlier this week about an article I wrote years ago when I worked at 42nd Street, the 40 Deuce. Were you at 42nd or Starrett?
I had offices at both.
Both. Okay, so I was at 42nd. And I'd come in early, and so you're talking about being emotional and tearing up and those kind of things. I'm that kind of a person. If something hits me, I'm not afraid to show that. And I think that it's been kind of bastardized as it relates to women's qualities. That you'll cry, all these kinds of things. But that's a cool thing to have. And the situation was that I came in early, and I'd always see the cleaning lady. And I would always stop and talk with her. I'd bring her coffee, and she was almost afraid to have a conversation with me because she figured I was a big shot or whatever it was. Then she, okay. So then she would come and sit in the office, and she'd tell me about what she did over the weekend, and we built this relationship over the years. when I was leaving and she found out, she waited for me one morning and she told me how important it was for her to meet me and what I meant to her. And she'd go and see her girlfriends and she'd talk about how she would have this conversation with me, and I accepted her as a person, and she was org chart wise may have been way down on the org chart. And when I read that, I started tearing up because I remember that moment. And I wrote an article based on that, and someone posted it the other day and they said how much it meant to them. And they said, I still use this as a reference point as to how to treat people.
Oh, that's such a beautiful story.
And I read that this morning. I was going and I read it again, and right away I could feel myself welling up in reading through that and the stories that she told me as to how I connected with her. And I said, that wasn't an act. That's just the way that I am. And, so it wasn't like I went to a leadership development session and they said you always should show empathy. It wasn't one of those kind of things because I didn't even know what empathy was back during that era.
Yeah. No, it's a really sweet story. And
Yeah.
I love that she told you, because I think about how often people don't express that kind of thing.
Exactly. So you talked about a family of entrepreneurs. Let's close it out with that. Talk about your family. Talk about how you got the genes that you have to say, I'm going to go out and conquer the world. Women's sports started with that and then transition to healthy living.
The crazy genes.
It's a cool gene.
Yeah, no, it's a cool and crazy gene. I'd say, so my grandfather is such a huge mentor for me, and he was an incredible entrepreneur, but also just brought such ethics and integrity to the way he did everything. And also he's such a strong value driven person. And so I think a lot of the sort of bigger picture qualities and of how I try to show up as a leader come from him. My parents started a business when I was born, called I Was Framed, which was manufacturing picture frames and jewelry boxes and desk accessories, all handmade, fabric covered, right here in Los Angeles, California. Very 70s, very 70s. And that was, I guess I grew up around that to such a degree that I thought everybody did that. So, as a kid, I'd go to the office and file stuff. I mean, not a child labor situation, but I was around all the time, and so it just seemed normal. And I certainly remember there being challenges and stressful times too, but I didn't know any other way. I mean, I guess, I could have grown up with parents that were in big corporate situations, but I didn't. So I thought that was what everybody did. And then that certainly seemed like that was what I was going to do. And sure enough.
I know that's so cool to hear that. But my father owned a taxi company, and I learned more about business from him than I went that as opposed to my undergrad as well as going to NYU. That was the learning for me, is just bare bones without education and doing that.
I bet. And what an amazing kind of business to run. I'd love to pick.
Oh, the stories I could tell you.
Oh my God.
And driving taxi on the weekends and to make money for go back to school. Stories. You know what? And you mentioned tennis players, and I want to close it with this. Last week or 2 weeks back, they had a women's conference in Abu Dhabi. And leaders from across the globe. Hillary Clinton was there. Billie Jean King was there, and all of these amazing women. So I've got to reach out to some contacts, because you would be awesome for that.
Thank you. I would love that. That would be amazing.
Yeah. So I will work on that. So thank you so much for getting up. For folks that's listening into this, she's in California. I'm broadcasting today from New York. So the 9 o'clock start time is 6 a.m. her time. So this is what friends are for. Thank you so much. And hang on for a minute as we close out.